Let's open our command palette and click on create Aura event. We are going to name it result application event. Let the type be as application itself, and we are going to have an attribute within this event. Let's name our attribute as result, and this should be of type string. So that's it. Now our next job would be to fire this event from our board component. So here in our board component, once we finish a game, so that means once we are here, like where we declare either a user has won or if he has lost, we need to fire an event from here. So what I'll do, I'll create a new function inside my helper file, and in this function I'm going to fire the application event. Let's name this function as fire result event. First we need to get our event, so I'm going to have a const variable. Let's name it as app event, and we should get it from $a, and then we need to use our get method. Now we need to give our fully qualified event name with proper syntax, which is like e dot. Here e defines the event. Now your namespace, which is C. In case you are working with a managed package, then you need to give your namespace here instead of C. And then the last part would be your event name, which is result application event. And then we are going to set our parameter, which should be, I guess, result. And we are going to pass that inside our JSON object. So let's paste result here, and the result value we'll get from our controller method. So here I'll get result value, and we are going to pass that result value inside our result attribute, which is this one. And once we have our parameters supplied, next thing would be to fire this event. And that's it. Now we need to call this method from our controller file. So we are going to call it from here, helper dot fire result event. This is going to accept our component variable. Remember, we are accepting component variable, which we do not need actually because we are not using it anywhere. So we can remove it, and we can directly accept our result value. So we can supply win here. Now let's copy the same line, paste it again, and this time we need to supply lose. And that's it. Now we are firing an application event whenever a user either wins or loses. Our next job would be to handle this event inside our board panel component. So for that we need to have an handler here. Let's do that. Inside this handler we need to have an event attribute, and this should accept the fully qualified event name, which is C colon result application event, and then it should have an action attribute, and let's name it as on result handler. Now we need to create this method inside our JS file or the controller file. And here first we are going to get our result attributes value. So let's get that. Remember, we need to use our getParam method to get the parameter. And here if the result is win, then we are going to do something here, else we are going to do something else. Now what I want to do is first I'll disable my reshuffle button by default, which is this one. So let's disable it. Actually for that we need to have one more attribute so that we can store if this button is disabled or not. So let's name this attribute as reshuffle disabled. it should be of type boolean, and let's give it default value as true, because by default we want to disable our reshuffle button. And now we are going to use the value of this attribute here. So that's it. Now if the user wins, then we want to disable our button again. So it will be like component.set. We just need to set our reshuffle disabled attributes value, and we are going to set it to true if user wins. But if he loses, then we are going to set it to false, so that the user can keep on playing. And I think we are good now. We can deploy our code. Make sure that you deploy everything together. So right click on the default folder and click on deploy. Now if you'll notice, our reshuffle button is disabled by default, and if you start a game and keep on clicking on these tiles, if you win, then it will remain disabled. But if you lose, maybe this time we will lose, then it will be enabled. And now you can click on this reshuffle button and rearrange your tiles. We need to write that logic, so let's quickly do that, because if you click on it now, nothing will happen. So what we need to do, we'll create another Aura method inside our child component, which is the board component. And on click of this reshuffle button, we are going to call that Aura method. Let's create another Aura method and let's name it as reshuffle board. Let's name our action as reshuffle board. We can remove the attribute as we do not need it, and that's it. Now let's define this reshuffle board method inside our controller file. So I hope you get the gist here. When we wanted to start a new game, after clicking on this start new game, we were using this Aura method. Now if you want to reshuffle our board, then again we need to use another Aura method, because we are communicating from parent component to our child component. This will have very simple definition. We'll simply randomize our existing words. We do not need to generate a new board. So let's get our words first. Now we will randomize these words. And to do that, we already have a method inside our helper file, which is called randomize array. So we are going to call this method. So it's always best that you have your reusable code inside the helper file, that we can call it from multiple places. And now we need to set these randomized words back again inside our words attribute. And in the end, we are going to reset our game, because we want to reset our mouse left counter. We also want to reset our result as well. So we are going to call our helper method, which is called, where is it? Reset board. So this method resets our click count and the result. So I think we are good. Now we need to call this method from our board panel parent component. So for that we already have an Aura ID for our board component, and we need to call it on click of our reshuffle button. So this should be the method. I think we already have it defined here. So yeah, let's remove it. Let's copy this code to find our board component, and now it will be like board comp dot, I think our Aura method name is reshuffle board, and that's it. Now let's deploy our code. Hopefully this should work. We need to deploy everything. Once you lose, the reshuffle button is enabled. Let's click on it and nothing is happening. I think we have some error in our code. So let's open our DevTools, and remember we need to use our debug mode. So click on this pause on quote exceptions and let's click on this reshuffle button. So here it says that we did not pass the array to our randomize array function. Let's check that. Okay, and that's because we are not getting these words, we are setting it here. So this method should be get, then we will have our words array inside this variable and this should work. Let's click on this reshuffle button now and it's working. The only change that we need to make is as soon as you click on this reshuffle button, we again need to disable it. So this should be pretty straightforward. Here we'll disable this again. V dot, and that's it. Now I'll make one last change in my code. So far we have been using very plain text inside these styles. We are not setting the open attribute to our block component, but if you remember, our block component can accept this open attribute as well from the parent component. When we are calling it from our board component, we are never passing this open attributes value, right? So what I'll do now, I'll change this word array to an array of objects. This will help us to freshly regenerate the board, because if you do not have this open attribute along with a word, then you cannot indicate if this word was opened before or not. So this is not as complicated as it sounds. I'll show you how you can change your strings array to an object array. And when we are randomizing our array, so I'll iterate over all these words and I'll simply add one more property which says open equals to false. So it will be like words array dot map. Now this map is a JavaScript function which iterates over all the array elements and return back new array. And that's exactly what we want. We want to iterate over all the array elements, and within this function we want to change this element with an object. So what I'll do, I'll return an object back to my caller. So it will be like word should be this element itself, because this was a string array, and the second property would be open, which will be false by default. And we'll store the output in a new array which I'll call word object array, and we'll use this word object array here as well. Now if you do not know what I'm doing here, again I'll highly recommend you guys to read JavaScript docs, because this map is a standard JavaScript function. Now since our array is an object array, we need to make some changes to our existing methods, which is first one is this get winword. So here instead of returning this array index, what we want, first we'll get the item from this array index, and now this won't be a string, this will be an object, and from this object we want to return this property which is word, right? So we need to add that using our dot operator. Now the last part would be to pass this open attribute to our block component. So here now we are iterating over an array of object. So this word would be an object. So in order to pass the label, you need to pass word dot word, or you can change it to maybe word object. That sounds better, I believe. And from this word object you are passing the word property, and we'll pass our open property as well, which is this one, and this should be like word object dot open. So I think this should work. Let's redeploy our changes. I think this is the longest video of this course. I did not intend it to be this big, but I had to explain a lot of stuff. Okay, this works pretty well. Let's keep on playing till the time we win. Okay, so now we win and it's working fine. Let's generate a new board. Cool, so it's working. Now in the next video we are going to learn how you can call an Apex method from Aura components.